Hello there. Welcome back to the booth here in Barcelona. That's Ian Duke. I am Marshall Sutcliffe. We had an exciting quarterfinal to kick things off in the morning.
Awesome.
We saw Thailand go through. And I don't know about you, Ian, but I'm hoping for another exciting one. We've got two powerhouses of magic, France versus Japan right now. Welcome to coverage of the World Magic Cup. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ian Duke. We are entering our second quarterfinal match here in the morning in Barcelona. Let's meet our teams.
Pierre Dagen.
Tejditi Hichem.
Arnaud Soumet.
Fatih Benaribi.
Team France!
Yuya Watanabe.
Kenji Tsumura.
Ryoichi Tamada.
Soyo-yo.
Team Japan!
I love those videos. You can see how excited the players are to be here with their teams, and why not? We're finally in the top 8 here. We've got France versus Japan. These are two magic powerhouses, and we're ready to head down to see Table C. Now, that's our back table where we're going to start off, and you can take a look at Hichem Tejidi. He's playing Atarka Red. His opponent, gulp, Kenji Samura from Japan, the Hall of Famer. He's so unassuming, just sitting there in his shirt like, yeah, let's play some Magic. This will be fun. But make no mistake, that's one of the best players ever to play. In fact, he was the best player for a significant stretch of his career as well. So let's get down to the match here as we start to break things down here. Ian, how are you seeing Atarka Red for France versus Abzan Rally on the Japanese side?
So we saw a similar matchup last round. I still think things are squarely in the favor of the rally deck. However, this rally deck is a little bit different. It does not have blue, which means no Jace, no Sidisi's Faithful. Those cards have more or less been replaced by Fleshbag Marauder and Carrier Thrall.
Okay.
So it's kind of a little bit of a wash. Sidisi's Faithful is great against Atarka Red for sure, but so is Carrier Thrall, just being able to block twice and trade with 2 creatures. Although it does cost 2 mana instead of 1. So it's more or less going to be a similar narrative for this matchup, and we'll see how things play out. We did receive word that Hichem did mulligan down to 5 with Atarka Red, whereas Kenji mulligan down to 6. And I think that exchange definitely favors the Abzan Rally deck, both because it has 1 extra card and just because the Rally deck's plan is to sort of run the Atarka deck out of resources. So it's already got a head start on that.
Quick start here for Hichem. He is going to get in there with a Lightning Berserker, pump it up, and even play a Titan Strength on it. And there's that Carrier Thrall that you just mentioned as a nasty little road bump here for the Atarka Red deck. You got to get through that thing twice, and the first time it's got 2 power as well.
Yeah, and it looks like Hichem had Wild Slash here planned to take out Kenji's first creature, but that won't work against Carrier Thrall. It'll leave behind an Eldrazi Scion token.
Yeah, Kenji finds himself down to 15. But with really the perfect creature to play against a Lightning Berserker here. And in fact, it is going to completely stop the assault right there. Tejidi is going to just have to pass a turn back as Kenji Samura slowly builds out his board. Here's an Elvish Visionary and an Evolving Wilds. He's moving things forward in a nice way. Again, I don't want to keep harping on this, but you know, as the trades start happening on the other side of the table for Samura, he is just not sad about that. That's kind of what his whole game plan revolves around.
Yeah, he just wants to run the Atarka deck out of resources, trade off creatures, get creatures in his graveyard. That's his deck's thing. And it looks like Kenji has a pretty good hand here to follow up with. Looks like he has a 4th land, which will give him access to Collected Company, and then right into Rally the Ancestors with Elvish Visionary and Grim Haruspex for card draw. So his deck is really doing its thing here.
And you know, I got to say that Hichem Tejidi's, he's not doing the thing here at all. He just passed a turn back twice in a row here. And Kenji Samura has to be feeling really comfortable about his position in game 1 here.
Although never count this Atarka deck out. It does have huge potential bursts of damage with cards like Become Immense and Temur Battle Rage. And we do see in Tejidi's hand there, he picked up a copy of Atarka's Command. He's got the Become Immense already. You know, he could just be 1 Temur Battle Rage away from connecting the dots and setting up a pretty explosive turn over the course of a few turns.
Unfortunately for Hishem, he's one Battle Rage and one Forest as well. No green mana yet for him.
Yes.
And it looks like he's going to play an Abbot of Carol Keep that is going to hit a Monastery Swift Spear. No mana. So that thing's going to stay floating in exile forever. And are we going to see the Collected Company here for Samura?
Yeah, I think most likely. Again, key cards that he's looking for here off Collected Company being Nantuko Husk, Zulaport Cutthroat. He wouldn't even be that sad for like a Fleshback Marauder just to take out one of those creatures. Looks like a pair of Cutthroats there. That's great news for Kenji. We'll see if there's anything even more appealing than that in the top 6. Oh, it looks like he goes with Nantuko Husk and Zulaport Cutthroat. Awesome pair of creatures there. Just what he wants to see. And that's going to lead him into a really profitable Rally the Ancestors within the next couple turns.
Yeah, and by profitable, you might mean game-winning here. He is getting pretty close to critical mass here on being able to start closing out a game.
Yeah, this Rally deck, it pretty quickly turns from generating lots of value to just killing the opponent. Between Zulaport Cutthroat triggers and multiple sacrifices to Nantuko Husk, it can actually win the game in a pretty explosive fashion. So Kenji just picking up another card off Elvish Visionary. He can kind of take his time here a little bit with Hishem showing no green mana so far, off of a mulligan to 5, and really not putting together a lot of offense. The only thing Kenji really needs to be worried about is a Become Immense Temur Battle Rage type combo down the road, but I think Hishem is still a couple turns away from that, even in an ideal scenario.
Uh-oh, here's a second Zulaport Cutthroat.
Okay, so that means
that's a ton of damage now.
Each of Kenji's creatures is worth 2 points of life drain, plus can pump up the Nantuko Husk for 2 points of power apiece on the Nantuko Husk. So we're probably going to see Nantuko Husk coming into the red zone pretty soon. Not this turn just yet.
He's just going to attack with the Carrier Thrall this time. But I mean, just looking at the Carrier Thrall, he sacrifices that. That's drain you for 2. He sacrifices the token, that's 2. He sacrifices one of the Visionaries, that's 2 more. Another Visionary, that's 2 more. We're already up to 8.
Yep. Husk can sacrifice itself. Zulaport Cutthroat can be sacrificed. So we're actually very close to lethal damage, depending on whether Hishem decides to block or not.
Yeah, Zulaport Cutthroat does count itself in that transaction. Hishem decides to take it and drop to even life totals at 14 apiece, and Kenji Samura just patiently passes the turn back with Grim Haruspex and Rally the Ancestors in hand. Samura noting here once again that Tajiri does not have green mana. It's just going to single block with an Elvish Visionary. Do your worst. And it's going to be a Wild Slash to take down one of the Zulaport Cutthroats. So since the Visionary was going to die thanks to the Prowess trigger anyway, Kenji Samura is just going to sacrifice it. He's also going to sacrifice the other one. And all of a sudden, Hishem's life total is plummeting here. Here comes Carrier Thrall getting sacrificed, producing an Eldrazi Scion, and that's another 2. So we just saw 6 life evaporate from Hishem Tajiri's life total.
And this is all in preparation for Kenji's following turn, where he has Canopy Vista for a second white source and Rally the Ancestors to get all these creatures right back again.
And that's game.
I believe that's going to be game for Kenji Samura. Japan taking game 1 here with Rally the Ancestors, and there it is.
And he shows it to him. That is going to do it. So Kenji Samura, in impressive fashion here, works his way through and takes game 1 with Rally the Ancestors. Japan up a game, We'll be back after these messages.
Ultra Pro is the place to go for all your Magic accessories. With card sleeves, deck boxes, play mats, and portfolios showing off the best Magic art, Ultra Pro is the standard in safe storage. Visit ultrapro.com for more information.
Put your game to the test at a Grand Prix. These open tournaments feature the best players in your region as well as top Magic pros from around the world. Upcoming Grand Prix events include Oakland, Vancouver, Mexico City, Nagoya, and Houston. Visit magic.wizards.com/Grand Prix for a complete schedule.
You mentioned it right away, Ian, that you thought this matchup did favor the Abzan Rally deck, and we can see why, though. We will note that Tajidi did mulligan to 5 that game. So he wasn't, operating under full power. But still, an easy win there, I'd say, in the first game. Let's take a look at our middle match, where we've got Pierre Dejean. He's playing Mardu Dragons, a deck that we did see pop up a few times here against Soyu Yu, who's on the Atarka Red for Team Japan. And whoa, this is the thumping. Again, we mentioned this back in our match of the Thailand match versus Denmark, that once the not Atarka Red deck can turn the corner and start attacking, the game tends to spiral out of control very quickly as the Atarka Red deck plays such poor removal and such bad defense. And we see that here. That was Kolaghan the Storm's Fury rumbling in there with 3 other creatures and putting Soyu Yu to 2.
Yikes.
So things not looking good for Japan here on the middle table, though. Remember, they have picked up game 1 of the table C there. That was Kenji Samura picking that up, but it looks like Pierre Dejean might be able to just finish things off, barring some type of miraculous finish here from Soyu Yu. And he doesn't find it, so Pierre picks up a win for Team France as he evens things up as far as game wins on either side goes. And we came in just in the nick of time to catch the end of that one, Ian. Not a whole lot to say about it, except for that Pierre seems to have turned the corner and finished things off. Secret of the Way probably playing a big role in that one as well. All right, well, that leaves one more table that we haven't actually hit up yet, so let's jump over there. We've got Esper Dragons versus Esper Dragons. A little mirror match here, Yuya Watanabe versus Arnaud Sume, and the control mirror.
Yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, Marshall, going up in a control mirror against a player of the caliber of Yuya Watanabe can be very intimidating, almost paralyzing at times. Just having to outwit someone that you know is one of the best players in the world. But Arnaud Sommet seems up to the challenge here for Team France. Surely an expert with the deck himself.
Looks like Arnaud's taking some damage here from Shambling Vent as he has fallen down to 9 life. Yuya Watanabe, absolute master. One of the most respected players in Magic. And he's whittled Arnaud Some's life total down to 9 here and make it 7. Tick-tock. I believe that Somé just drew Haven of the Spirit Dragon. A quick check of his graveyard reveals nothing. Can't get anything back. So once again, oh, here we go. Duress now is going to see ultimate price and a Selimgar Scorn. Yuya's going to take away the ultimate price before lining up this attack with Shambling Vent. Cancel that order. He's got Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which he's cleared the way for. And right in the nick of time there, Arnaud has found his own Shambling Vent. But now all of a sudden, it's Yuya's game to take over here with Jace Vryn's Prodigy. Also, we'll note that Yuya Watanabe has like 5 cards in his hand.
Yeah, Yuya's hand
He
is
is
stacked.
stacked up.
Double Selimgar Scorn with Dragon to enable them. Dragon Lord Silumgar, just in case Arnaud Sommet puts together some kind of threat. And in the meantime, transforming Jace with a pretty stocked graveyard too. I see a dig through time in there.
Yeah,
Sure
it
enough.
looks like Sommet may have flooded out a bit here, Ian. You know, he's got significantly more lands. He's got 12 lands on the battlefield to 8 for Watanabe, which, you know, in a control mirror, normally you're pretty fine with having more lands than your opponent, but it does look like it's left Sommet with a little less action than he would prefer, as Yuya Watanabe firmly in the driver's seat in this game.
Yeah, I mean, normally the way these control matchups play out is you just kind of trying to make your land drops and draw cards and build up a hand of counter spells. But in this particular standard environment, the Esper Dragons deck is a little bit more proactive than that. And there are things like Jace Vryn's Prodigy that can come down early in the game, or fights over dig through times that are actually very, very relevant turning points in control matchups that happen earlier in the game. So it's not your classic draw go type control. And we can see, it looks like Yuya has pulled into the lead pretty substantially.
Yeah, I don't see how Sommet comes back from this. You know, these control decks, once they get this far ahead, where now Yuya just found a Dragon Lord Ojutai, he's got multiple Silumgar scored in his hand, and he's facing down an opponent on one card. I just don't think there's anything that Sommet can do to come back from this point.
Yeah.
It may not look like that looking at the battlefield, but
Yes, please.
you know, Yuya just changed that. Now it looks exactly like that looking at the battlefield. Interestingly, Sommet just ripped Foul Tongue Invocation off the top. It won't resolve, most likely. But hey, that is what he wanted to see.
Yeah, that's true.
Unfortunately for him, Yuya has multiple counter spells. He even has that Shambling Vent that he can activate and sacrifice that if he chooses.
So I imagine the play from Sommet is pass the turn during your upkeep Foul Tongue Invocation.
Yeah, probably.
You have to take out the Ojutai before it hits you a single time, and the game is not getting any better for you. It's not like you can wait for a dragon to enable your Silumgar Scorn back up.
All right. He looks like he's just going to go for the main phase. Foul Tongue here. This
The other complication here, Marshall, is that Yuya has the Shambling Vent as well.
Yeah, I mentioned that a minute ago. He
Yeah.
can just activate that and sacrifice it, which is what he does here. And there's a Languish that will probably be met with a Silumgar Scorn here. One card left for Sommet.
Yeah, a nice attempt by Sommet there. With
I like it.
The bait with the Foul Tongue into the Languish there, forcing Yuya both to sacrifice his Shambling Vent and have a counter spell. And it looks like actually Yuya declining to counter that
Okay.
would rather just value the Silumgar Scorn.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, he does have two of them in his hand here. That said, a Dragon Lord Ojutai in the graveyard's not the worst case scenario for Watanabe anyway, as he could also just find a Sanctum Guggen and get it back at some point. He's also got a replacement Jace Vryn's Prodigy and a Dragon Lord Silumgar in hand, so things looking beautiful here for Watanabe. He can just kind of choose his route to victory and take the path of least resistance and least risk. Sommet has a Silumgar Scorn of his own, but of course he doesn't have a dragon. And right as I say that, he draws Dragon Lord Silumgar. So not too bad. That turns on his Scorn and gives him a way to steal away a Jace here as well.
And this is a pretty big deal because Sommet also has Haven of the Spirit Dragon on the battlefield. So even if Dragon Lord Silumgar is answered, he has a virtual second copy there by sacrificing his land. And there's the Silumgar Scorn from Yuya.
Revealing his own Dragon Lord Silumgar. Immediately gets it back and passes a turn. Crux of Fate off the top for Yuya Watanabe. Been some nice draws here for Sommet in the later portion.
So here's a flashback duress from Yuya
And did I see
Watanabe's
correctly
Jace.
that he used his Jace to target Silumgar Scorn in the graveyard there as well?
Oh, I see. Did he targeted
Yeah.
the Silumgar Scorn and played duress from hand?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a nice play.
That is, I believe, what happened here. I may be incorrect about that, though. It happened a little quickly. Right, either way, he's going to loot, discard a Jace, play a Jace, and get rid of a Jace. So there's a little shell game of Jace Vryn's Prodigies and Jace Telepath Unbounds there. He's took away the Silumgar Scorn, and now he's going to fire off another dig through time. And, you know, we mentioned it earlier. Yu is just in such a commanding position here. Another dig through time. This is the second one that he's resolved since we came to the match. These players are in game one. Now I've got an update from table C. That was the one where we had where we saw Hishem Tajiri have a tough time on a mulligan to 5 against Kenji Samura. Not so much the second game. Tajiri has taken that game and evened things up, so they're going to game 3. Predictably, they're kind of working their way through their games quickly here, but this is a control mirror. These ones take a little while. Okay, here's Dragonlord Ojutai. Once again, though, Yuya Watanabe still has a Jace Telepath Unbound, which we've seen. He's had one form or another on the battlefield since we came to the match. And now he's got Dragonlord Ojutai to help finish things off as well.
And having freshly duressed his opponent.
Clean of cards.
Yuya knows Somei has only the Dragonlord Silumgar that he just returned from Haven of the Spirit Dragon.
Plus his draw step. Somei is just going to pass the turn back. There's a Haven off the top for Yuya, though he just delved away a few Dragonlord Ojutais. But hey, if this one were to die, he's got a backup plan there as well. And he gets to hit with Dragonlord Ojutai, which should signal the end is near as Somei falls down to 2. Look at that hand for Watanabe. He's got a discard, but don't think he minds. Arnaud Somei staying focused here, but he knows he is woefully behind as Crux of Fate hits the yard at the discard step here. Or the cleanup step, I should say. And here is Somei in his last turn. Maybe? He drew an ultimate price. That doesn't do anything. So first things first, fire off the big Dragon Lord here, get it countered, and that is enough. Yuya Watanabe takes down game 1 over Arnaud Somei. So that means that we've got 1 game for Japan on table A, 1 game for Japan on table C, but on table B, Pierre Dajon is up a game, and of course on table C, 1 game for France as well, so they're going to a game 3. So things evened up currently as far as game count goes, at 1 game apiece on either side. But it's kind of staggered. We've got a game 3 coming, and we're going to jump in, it looks like, on game 2 here on table B. That's Pierre Dajon. He is the team captain. He's playing against Soyo Yu on Atarka Red, and what, those must be Radiant Flames up in the graveyard there? I can't read it, but the lack of a board state and seeing
looks to be the case.
Hordeling outbursts in the graveyard there for Soyo Yu leads me to believe that multiple Radiant Flames may have been cast this game by Pierre.
Yeah, despite both players having only 3 lands, it looks like this is probably around turn 7-ish of this game, just based on what's in the graveyard on either side.
Yeah, that's actually, it looks like the 3rd copy of Hordeling Outbursts for Soyo Yu this game. Yet somehow Soyo's the one who's down to 7 life. Actually, it looks like Pierre is the one who's at 7 life. We're going to get that flipped over here in just a moment, but that makes more sense.
So if that is the case, the things could be pretty dire here for Pierre. Let's see what he comes up with. This is a Mardu Charm.
Mardu Charm making a couple of soldiers?
Yeah, and they have first strike warriors, actually.
Warriors, thank you. Sorry, of course they're warriors. It's Mardu.
And they get first strike for the turn.
So he can
Pick off either the Zergo or a couple goblins, more likely the goblins, I say here.
Yeah, Dejounte is going to double. He's going to block. Oh, but Soyo Yu shows him become immense, and that's lethal. So that is going to be things evened up on table B. So now 2 of our 3 tables are sitting at 1 game apiece. Ooh, this one's shaping up to be a little bit of a nail biter down the stretch here.
Yeah, very close matchup between these 2 powerhouse teams. And of course, this is an elimination match here in our top 8. So both teams fighting for their survival and their chance to be crowned world champions.
So why don't we jump back and pick up on game 3. Looks like table C. Hishem Tajidi on a Tarka Red versus the Hall of Famer Kenji Sumura playing that Abzan Rally deck. Kenji Sumura, not the team captain for Japan. I wouldn't be surprised if he took a leadership role on the team as kind of the elder statesman of that team.
Yeah, certainly
it's
possible.
It's actually Watanabe who's the captain. Sumura did it the hard way. He won a World Magic Cup qualifier to get on this team.
Oh, no kidding.
Can you imagine being Watanabe? You get a text from your friend. Sumura just won a WMCQ. It's got to feel good.
Yeah, you often get the sense with these sort of highly decorated players that have played on the Pro Tour for years and years that they've been elevated to this level and they're just sort of riding the train and playing in the high level tournaments over and over again. But often, when a player like that actually takes some time off, they can come back relatively quickly by winning a PTQ or a WMCQ or something along those lines. Just kind of showing.
Still got it?
Still got it, yeah. Like
Yeah.
The next level, like it truly does. There truly is a difference between being a Pro Tour mainstay, a Hall of Fame level player,
Yes.
versus someone who's competing at the Pro Tour and WMCQ level. Not to intimidate those who are on their quest for ascendancy, so to speak,
but perhaps to let them know that there is a bar up there that
yes,
you can reach.
there is always a next level in Magic, and that's one of the beautiful things about this game is you can have been playing for 10, 12, 15, 20 years, and there's still a next level to get to.
Yeah, that's why I'm still here, buddy. And this looks like Hishem is trying to decide if he wants to keep a 6-card hand here. Remember, he's already mulliganed to 5 in the first game. In the second game, he didn't. And he took that game down, which of course means that Sumura is on the play here for the last game.
And Hishem does keep his 6-card hand, does scry, leaves the card on the top.
All right. And what do we see there? A Cleric of the forward order for Kenji? Is that what I'm seeing?
Yes.
All right, so he plays a Cleric. He puts it immediately in the graveyard, though, because Hishem had the answer for it in the form of Fiery Impulse and followed up with Dragon Fodder. Sumura has another Cleric. Wow, playing Cleric into Cleric would have been backbreaking. That's 6 life.
Yeah, unfortunately, the first one was killed in response to its life gain trigger, so it didn't get to count itself, which is one of the key weaknesses. People often debate between Cleric of the forward order and Arishan Cleric. As to which one is better in the matchup or can gain you more life, and that's one of the weaknesses of the Cleric of the forward order.
But Sumura does manage to stick the second one and gain that 2 life. Here's Monastery Swift Spear. And this curve out is looking pretty decent here for Tajidi. Kenji Sumura is going to block, but guess what? Atarka's command, yeah, is going to take down that Cleric. It's going to trade, but still he's taking
7.
what, 3, 4, 5? Is it 8?
Yeah, 8 damage, yeah, from the prowess trigger as well.
That's a big hit here in the early stages. Kenji Sumura down to 14.
So Hishem Tajidi making the most out of his 6-card hand, and also with a Titan Strength and a Wild Slash to back that up.
Kenji Samura stuck on 2 lands here. He needs to get things moving. He's got double collected company.
Another
in
Wild
hand.
Slash off the top. This could take out both the Carrier Thrall and the token. Looks like Tajiri just goes for the attack instead.
So does he just Wild Slash his head here then?
That makes sense to me. Or Titan Strength on the unblocked Goblin token. Either
fair.
are reasonable. I think I like the Titan Strength here, just getting the Scry, making sure you're connecting. But no, it goes with the Wild Slash instead.
Now, is he going to take out this Scion or let him have it? Because an opponent who is stuck on mana, that could be big. It lets him play a 3-mana spell this turn, potentially.
Yeah, it could be, although I think you're happy if Kenji sacrifices the Scion. I mean, that Scion represents an extra block, a potential trade with the Goblin token. So
Fair point.
Yeah, I think you value like a real creature, so to speak, more than that. And sure enough, that is what happens. But Catacomb Sifter comes with a Scion of its own. So one of the best possible plays that Kenji could have here. So this is shaping up to be a game, Marshall.
Yeah, it certainly is, especially if Kenji can find a 4th mana source here.
But another huge draw for Hishem Tajiri, a second copy of Monastery Swiftspear with haste, with prowess, and 2 spells in hand for 1 mana apiece. Hishem Tajiri can play all of his spells this turn and gets into the red zone. We will see how Kenji decides to block and how Hishem decides to deploy these 2 spells in his hand and those prowess
Huge
triggers.
pressure
Yes.
on Kenji Samura to try to survive here. He knows he has the tools in his hand. If he can ever get to a Rally of the Ancestors, he can get back both of the Cleric of the Forward orders. And boom, he's got a huge life gain and a big board state, but he needs to stick around long enough to start casting the cards in his hand. Meanwhile, Tajiri is just on the warpath here. He has been using up his mana, getting in extra damage. And he has a really nice draw here.
So it looks like one potential way Kenji could block here, yeah, is the Sifter on 1 Monastery Swiftspear, Goblin with Eldrazi Scion, and Hishem has the option to Titan Strength and Wild Slash, which would be a total of 8 damage, I believe.
Kenji Samura at 11 life.
So I think I like using both these spells here for Hishem. It's 8 damage and clears Kenji's board and gives Hishem a Scry to find a follow-up like an Atarka's Command or another burn spell or another pump spell.
So you like Titan Strengthening the unblocked Monastery Swiftspear and
Yes.
Wild Slashing the head?
Yeah, depending on what you see with the Scry here. I mean, the Wild Slash to Kenji will pump up the blocked Monastery Swiftspear to a 3/4, letting it trade with, or letting it destroy the Catacomb Sifter, and that'll leave Hishem with 2 Monastery Swiftspears against an empty board, Kenji at 3 life, and Hishem having just scryed.
It's hard to argue with that.
These have been a tough series of turns for Hishem, actually. A number of different options as far as how to use his different spells. Looks like he Titan Strength the blocked Monastery Swiftspear.
So he's valuing holding on to that Wild Slash instead.
Okay, that's fairly reasonable here. I'm sure he has something particular in mind as far as planning out what Kenji's next turn could be. For example, Wild Slashing the blocker and then getting in 4 damage with the Swiftspears. There are actually a number of different lines that Hishem could have taken over the past couple turns.
Whew, still no lands for Samura.
Very unfortunate between his draw step and the...
That's another Swiftspear here.
Wow! So I think, yeah, just sending them in, allowing the block, I think is totally fine here. You could Wild Slash the Visionary and get in for 6, but I think it's better just to keep it in hand. I mean, Kenji, if Kenji leaves this unblocked, he's risking dying. Of course, he doesn't know exactly what Hishem has in hand, but can assume it is a spell based on how Hishem has been thinking and planning out his attacks.
It's only 1 card left, so he knows that it can only be one thing.
Really tough spot for Kenji here. I mean,
I think he didn't block.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so Wild
Hit
Slash you.
Take a go to 1.
And things looking dire for Team Japan here.
It might be too late for a land, though he does find one. The problem is he's facing 3 lethal threats here.
There's Zulaport Cutthroat, and I don't think this is going to be good enough. I think just an attack from the
Does
three Swift Spears.
Samura have a murderous cut in hand? He does.
Oh, wow. But here's a dashed
Tajiri
Zergo's.
cross Zergo, another haste creature. There's tons of them in the deck.
And is there a way for Kenji to get out of this with the murderous cut? I don't believe there is. That's
There
it. And there's a
isn't.
handshake.
Samura has to extend the hand, and you can see the pride on Hishem's face, and he should have it. He just defeated Kenji Samura for his team, and that was the match going to Tajiri. So France is 1 to the good. They only need to pick up one of these remaining 2 matches to defeat Japan. Most people had Japan as their #1 best team coming into the whole competition of 73 countries. This team was stacked up, and now they could be facing elimination.
Just a devastating blow for Team Japan there, Marshall. I'm sure they were counting on having the upper hand in that matchup between Abzan Rally and Atarka Red. So losing that one, a huge disappointment for them. They're going to have to make up for it in the other 2 matches.
Super tough there for Samura not finding that third land until so late in the game. All right, so let's jump to table B. That's Pierre Dejean on the left-hand side. He's playing Mardu Dragons. He lost game 2 to Soyo Yu from Japan, who's playing Atarka Red, and that forced this a game 3. We get to see more Atarka Red action here in our feature match. And Soyo Yu has to win this game to keep Japan alive. Pierre's the team captain, and he has now the weight of the match on his shoulders. As if he can win this single game against Soyo Yu, he is going to send France into the semis and knock out Japan. France was our #1 seed coming into the top 8. Japan came in at number 8.
And that seeding really mattering here because Soyo Yu is on the draw for this 3rd game here. Pierre Dejean sacrificing Evolving Wilds at the end of the turn, fetching up Mountain. And we got to look at Soyo Yu's hand there, looking fairly slow for Atarka Red standards there. I mean, he's got a Dragon Fodder on turn 2, but Fiery Impulse, not a proactive card, does stand to take out maybe a Seeker of the Way or something like that.
And yeah, that does look like what's going to happen here, though we will note that, yeah, game 1 was some haymakers, because that was 3 copies of Hordling Outburst that we saw from Soyo Yu, which is one of his more powerful, you know, he doesn't play that many 3-drops, and when he gets one down, they tend to be pretty good. But Pierre also had drawn multiple copies of Radiant Flames out of his sideboard. In this game, it's much different. Soyo Yu does not have any Hordling Outburst. He has the mini version, which is Dragon Fodder, and Pierre has no sweepers either.
Yeah, Pierre's hand a little bit on the slower side as well, so we could see sort of an evenly matched hand, game here with both players having a little bit slower hands. There's Seeker of the Way for Pierre Dejean. I believe he has a 2nd Seeker of the Way and a Thunderbreak Regent, and I think he just picked up a Murderous Cut that turn, which is a huge pickup for him, both being a spell to trigger Seeker of the Way, and more importantly, a removal spell. Oh, okay, little bumble on the fetch there with the old Wild Slash under the mountain trick. I'm just kidding, of course, it was a pure accident there, but kind of a funny.
Soyo says, yeah, okay.
And there's that turn 2 Dragon Fodder for Soyo Yu.
Okay, so reasonable start here for Soyo. He got rid of a threat, an important one as well, and produced his own threat on his turn. So, okay, moving along. Pierre has 2 of his teammates looking on behind. They don't seem to be adding much to the conversation. I think they're just letting Pierre play his game here. And it's Seeker of the Way. Wow, so I just got news from our A table. Remember, this was Yuya Watanabe versus Arnaud Sume. Sume picks up game 2. They're going to game 3.
Wow.
We're going to hold them. So they will be there to see what happens here. Remember, this could be the deciding match we're watching right now. If Pierre Dajon can finish off Soyo Yu, he will take the win in this match, and that will give France the victory as they would move on to the semis. Now, if Soyo Yu manages to pull this one out with the Tarka Red, then it's all going to be on Yuya Watanabe versus Arnaud Sommet.
Soyo's hand just looking super anemic here with Titan Strength and Dragon Fodder, his only non-land cards. He could attack with the Goblin tokens and Titan Strength, a blocked one, but that's just a rough use of resources there.
Yeah, and the longer the game goes, it tends to favor the Mardu Dragons deck. He has ways to gain life. He has bigger, more important threats like Thunderbreak Regent, and it gives him more time to find the removal spells he needs to break up the disaster finishes, from Dagen's standpoint. And he's in fact got multiples. He's got a Murderous Cut. He's got a Thunderbreak Regent. Like, this isn't looking great for Japan right now.
Definitely not. Although, you never know. Titan Strength does give Japan a scry when they do choose to use that. So I like this play here. I mean, you don't really want to be 2-for-1ing yourself in the sense of trading off a creature and your Titan Strength for that Seeker of the Way. And by leaving these 4 Goblin tokens up, it makes any potential attack with the Seeker of the Way fairly unprofitable for Pierre Dagen. And I'm sure Soyo is thinking, since Pierre played out this Seeker of the Way, he's probably not planning on casting Radiant Flames anytime soon. And even if he is, at least the Seeker goes away in that exchange.
Soulfire Grandmaster now in hand for Pierre Dagen.
Soulfire Grandmaster, a very dangerous card here, especially in combination with Radiant Flames, because of course it does give your instant and sorcery spells lifelink, which means the damage dealt by Radiant Flames will gain you that much life.
And it deals a lot of damage when your opponent's played a couple of Dragon Fodders.
That's right. So we'll see what Pierre Dagen comes up with here. Thunderbreak Regent would be a fine play, as would be leaving up Murderous Cut option, just in case there's some kind of combination from Soyo.
Pierre does now consult his teammates.
I like this play of the Soulfire Grandmaster here. You have stabilized at a fairly high life total. I think one of the only realistic ways this game slips away from Pierre Dagen is if Soyo is able to put together, Become Immense plus Teamer Battle Rage or something of the sort. And so Dagen can keep up Murderous Cut for basically the rest of the game.
He's just going to leave the shields up, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, given that the spell has Delve and only really costs a single black mana, at this point it costs 2 mana, but shortly it'll only cost 1 black mana, he can basically afford to leave it up for the entire game if he just plays a little bit carefully and slowly.
Just found a Duress.
That's a great pickup as well. Unfortunately, Pierre has only 1 black mana here, so he does have to make the choice of whether he wants to put shields down for a turn. And I think that's fine given that you're casting Duress, because if there is some kind of combination, you get to take up one of the cards.
Yeah, I mean, he would have to have 2 copies of each, combo card to be able to fully play around it. Now, there's going to be good news and bad news for Pierre. The bad news being he's not going to hit anything with Duress, and that's also the good news, because it's all lands in hand for Soyo Yu.
So Soyo casts the Titan Strength in response to Duress, because it would be taken anyway. It's his only option for Duress there, just to get the Scry off the Titan Strength, which is not a strong play, but it's better than the alternative of just simply discarding the Titan Strength.
And a card goes to the bottom. This draw not coming together for Team Japan here. And yeah, take a look at the pretty pictures, because that's it.
And you can see Soyo's hands almost shaking as he reveals that disappointing hand there.
It's terrible. And he knows that this could be it for Team Japan. I mean, are we really going to see Denmark and Japan knocked out in the first 2 rounds of the quarters here?
It's definitely possible, Marshall.
Wow. Thailand already through to the semis, and France looking to join them. France, our #1 seed, coming into the top 8 here. They have crushed this tournament.
So I think for Pierre here, he probably just attacks with the Seeker of the Way, 3/3 lifelink, gains some life, offers to trade with goblins, most likely just gets through for 3 damage and gains 3 life. And then a second main phase Battlefield Forge and Thunderbreak Regent puts him in a pretty nice posture here where he can end the game quickly and also isn't really leaving himself vulnerable to anything from Soyo.
Well, he did get blocked by the 1 token that had gotten hit by the Titan Strength there.
Oh, right, of course. Yeah, I did forget about that.
And there's that Thunderbreak Regent to follow up. You know, Pierre may have forgotten as well.
It's possible, yeah.
That was a long time ago. Does end up putting another card in the graveyard for possible Murderous Cut applications down the line here.
That's true. He did already have 4, though, from casting Duress that turn. So.
Sure. All right, so critical draw steps here for Team Japan and Soyo Yu. They've got to come up with some pretty remarkable things off the top of the deck to get Pierre Dajon from 21 to 0 before Soyo dies. And all he finds is Zergo Bellstriker. Okay, so Thunderbreak Regent takes that first big chunk of damage out of Soyo's life total, dropping him down to 13. Wow, and it's not getting any better here as Pierre plays a Shambling Vents as well. He's got a lifelink creature, a lifelink creature land, and he's got a big dragon that's hard to deal with as well. So things looking fantastic for a #1 seed.
Not only that,
to advance,
but also a Murderous Cut that he can potentially buy back with the Soulfire
you're
Grandmaster
right.
by delving.
I don't think anyone was surprised to see Japan make the top 8 here. I think people will be surprised to see that they didn't make it any further than the quarters. Now, on the other side of that coin, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised to see France advance.
That's
either.
right, yeah, I was going to say.
They are World Magic Cup champions in 2013.
Japan, definitely one of the favorites and frontrunners in this tournament, but France is as well. I mean, this is probably the big quarterfinal matchup that we have here in our top 8 bracket. So
absolutely.
It's not a surprise to see either of these teams advance, and consequently, either of them not advance.
It's true.
So yeah, it looks like, was that Murderous Cut with buyback? From
so,
yeah,
yep.
from the Soulfire Grandmaster.
Zergo Bellstriker down.
By buyback, of course, we were referring to Soulfire Grandmaster's activated ability there that can return an instant or sorcery to your hand after it resolves.
And we are seeing the final stages of a game that is going to lead France as the #1 seed into the semifinals. As Pierre Dajon, the team captain, leads his team onward here. What does Soyo Yu find? He's at 7 life. He finds Become Immense. That is not nearly enough here.
Yeah, Cardi would have loved to see earlier in the game with the hopes of combining it with Temur Battle Rage. But at this stage, it is not going to be enough, despite being probably the most powerful card he could have drawn.
Right.
Just to showcase how far he is behind in this game. At this point, he could almost choose his draw steps, and it still would not be enough.
It won't be enough. Pierre has that Murderous Cut in hand. He attacks for 4, putting Soyo Yu down to 3 life, and just says, I'm just going to kill you next turn. I don't think there's an out in the deck for Soyo Yu. He draws his card for the turn. He is going to tap some mana here. It looks like it's an Abbot of Carol Keep. Okay. And he finds a mountain off the top. He's going to play it. Is there anything left for Japan in the tank here, or are they taking their exit? They are out. France through to the semifinals. Big hugs down there. You can see the excitement, and I would say a mix of relief in there as well after drawing Japan in the quarters as France moves their way through, capitalizing on that #1 seed. They got to play first, and they're going to be in our semifinals.
Big hugs there for teammates. big handshakes for their opponents. An awesome match there. Very, very exciting.
Yeah, super exciting stuff and well earned by France. You know, they want to put their name in the books as one of those countries that has picked up multiple world team championships before, and they could do it today. They just knocked out one of the 3 countries that does already have their name in that particular book. And they could write their own story as we continue. Another great quarterfinal match in the books. 2 more to go before we move on to our semis. To get you updated on what we have coming up next, we've got Richard Hagan at the news desk.
Thanks very much to Marshall and their Ian Duke with the call on the second quarterfinal, Brian David Marshall. And, you know, you've got to say that when you look at that Kenji Samura match up against Ataka Red with Ichem Tajiri, in the end, you know, sometimes just not having the lands when you need them can make the difference.
Kenji Samura needed about 3 of the lands that his teammate drew. They needed to swap. It was pretty brutal. But you know what? Amazingly well played by France. I mean, you saw the emotion from Pierre Dejean.
Now, he is, of course, a lot of people won't have interacted with Pierre. Pierre is one of the quietest men alive. You know, he's like, how are you? I'm good. How are you? I'm okay. That's the kind of emotional range you generally get with Pierre.
Yeah.
He was not just fist pumping, but I mean, that was an adrenaline rush, like almost of Craig Jones top decking in 2006.
And again, France is the top seed coming in. They haven't lost in standard yet.
Yep, beaten Japan twice. They have to feel like they are in great shape throughout. Japan and Denmark have both gone by the wayside, you know, really in terms of teams with the big name players. They're sweating Austria still, they're sweating Italy still, but they have to feel in tremendous shape here. Yeah, I'd also like, before we move away from our second quarterfinal, to just have a word about Arnaud Soumet, because in the end, he was not put under the fiercest of pressure, because had that middle match gone differently, it would have been game 3 in the Esper Dragons mirror. But let's remember, later in the day, when he comes back to carry on with Esper Dragons, he fought Yuya Watanabe to a 1-1 standstill. He came back from 1 down and won that game too. So France won with something to spare, and Soumet didn't capitulate against the 2-time player of the year.
And again, remember, in the last round of the Swiss, in the last round of pool play, they also they also put a beating on Japan.
Yeah, those 2 consecutive rounds. It's like, let's just do it all again tomorrow, and they did. All right, so let's take a look at the bracket. If you're just joining us, welcome along. It's a European morning, 11:15 in the morning here in Barcelona, 10:15 in Scotland. They're waiting for their last quarterfinal down at the bottom of the bracket. It was prime time in Japan as they watched their team, unfortunately, leave play. Prime time in Thailand as well, and they still get to rock and roll. It's going to be a heck of a Sunday night in Thailand right now for Virapat, Cyrila, Voracle and the team. And we have our first semi-final known. This afternoon, it will be Thailand against France. But we need another semi-final, and that means 2 more quarterfinals. So we turn our attention now to the bottom half of the bracket, and we're going to begin with the quarterfinal between one of the pre-tournament favourites, Austria, against one of the real Cinderella stories of this or any other World Magic Cup, Guatemala. So why don't we start by taking a look at the Austrian squad that's going to do battle here at the World Magic Cup. And we have Valentin Mackel, you see on the left there, with Bant Megamorph. Then you've got Sebastian Fiala Ibitz, who's going to be playing Mardu mid-range, 17 Grand Prix for him. And Nicholas Eigner, he's 34 now, 20 Pro Tours, just a huge amount of experience for him.
But it's
35.
been about 4 or 5 years since he's been to the Pro Tour, right?
That's right. Yes, it has. But I mean, I think rather than rustiness,
he was doing other things. He's excited to get back to it. I know all of these guys are excited to be going to the Pro Tour.
Yeah, for sure. And then Christoph Alcantara, who has Grand Prix success to his name. He's played on the Pro Tour before. And it's just that wide range of experience. The fact that their least experienced member, Sebastian Fiala Ibitz, has played 17 Grand Prix. You know, that's sort of most of the European Grand Prix for a couple of years. And Mackel, of course, a real star of this team.
And Mackel has a lot of time for Sebastian. He thinks he is a terrific young player. He's very excited to see him go to the Pro Tour and work with these guys.
Okay, let's take a look at their 3 decks then. Valentin Mackel in seat A will be playing Bant Megamorph. So we haven't seen one of these yet. This is our first appearance of Warden of the First Tree. Down the bottom there you see on the left, you'll see Gideon Ally of Zendikar and Dromaker's Command. In seat B, it'll be Sebastian Fiala Ibitz, and he's playing Mardu midrange, so more Planeswalker action. You've got Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker, and there's Ob Nixilis reignited up the top there, Crackling Dooms down the bottom. And finally, Nicholas Eigner, well, this is the traditional, pretty much what every team has one of, all the Dragon Lords, Ojutai and Silumgar, and the 4 copies of Jace, Vryn's Prodigy. So those are the 3 decks for Austria. What about their opponents, though? Guatemala, what a fairy tale story, BDM, a phenomenal story. There you see them in the official garb of Team Guatemala at the World Magic Cup. Jose Andres, yet to play on the Pro Tour, going to fix that in February. Wilfredo Bujorquez with Black Red Dragons, he has a bit of Pro Tour experience. And Christopher Virila, we thought for a long time was actually going to make the top 8 in his first Pro Tour. Ended up finishing 17th.
In his first Pro Tour? Do you know who finishes 17th in their first Pro Tour? Camille Cornelison.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal performance by him. Sitting out today, but part of the action as the coach, Fernando Jose Juarez Oliva. So let's take a look at the 3 Guatemalan decks for you. We have in seat A, Esper, not dragons. Notice there's no Dragon Lord Ojutai here. This is just Esper control. You've got Languish, you've got 2 Planar Outburst in this one. So that's how Guatemala have solved the unified standard puzzle. Seat B is Black Red Dragons. We've already seen Pierre Dajon with that for France. So you'll see Colligan and Colligan's Command. It's Thunderbreak Regents plenty. And then seat C, this is Red Green Landfall in the hands of the captain, Christopher Virila. All right, so we've been joined by Ian Duke, fresh out of the booth from the first 2 quarterfinals. Highlight of the morning so far for you?
Probably the final game in our first match between Thailand and Denmark. I believe it was Chom, the Thai player, versus Martin Dang. Yeah.
Yes.
And it all came down to a single moment where the Thai player sort of curved out with Onofenza into Solemn Sorin Visitor, was at 19 life, plus his Sorin. And if he were to attack there to try to go up to 24 life, he would have lost the game on the spot to a single Abbot of Carol Keep from Martin Dang.
Right.
Cautiously declines to attack, ends up playing conservatively and going on to win that game. But it all came down to that one moment. That was the entire match. Just astounding.
Yeah, and the fact of what did he do? He did nothing.
Right.
And that's such a tough skill to learn.
So many players would have fallen for that trap there, so to speak. And it showcases the little decisions matter so much in Magic.
Yeah, a tremendous moment there. So what about the matchup then? How does Austria and Guatemala stack up in seed A, B, and C? Let's take a look at the matchup for you. So Ian, we begin on the left. It is the captain of Austria, Valentin Mackel, with this Bant Megamorph deck. We haven't seen that yet in quarterfinal action against equally something slightly different, Jose Andres with Esper Control. What's your take on this?
So this is a close matchup. Traditionally, you'd say an Esper Control deck is well suited to beat a green-white sort of mid-range beatdown deck, but Bant Megamorph has some long game advantage with Den Protectors and things like that. So I'm going to put it probably 55-45 in favor of the Esper Control, but definitely not a resounding win for the Esper.
You think with Deathmist Raptors and the Den Protectors, your ability to recover very quickly from maybe a planar outburst?
I think that gives the Bant Megamorph deck a huge boost in the matchup, but not enough
So
of a
you think
boost
it's
to
that
make
bad?
it
You think it's that
favorable.
bad a matchup normally?
I think classically, Esper Control versus a green-white beatdown deck heavily favors the control deck, but with the addition of the Graveyard Recursion, brings it much more closer to 50-50.
Not specifically with these two players, but how much difference does player make? Because, in this example, Mackel has his 6 Grand Prix top 8s. Andres has yet to play at Pro Tour Grand Prix level. Is that the kind of thing that gives you 2 percentage points, 5 percentage points? Is it 25 percentage points?
It's a huge factor in this matchup. I think it's going to be a very nuanced matchup where a lot of players playing the green-white deck would just feel like, hey, I'm the beatdown, I'm just going to move all in on playing all my creatures and trying to end the game as quickly as possible. Whereas a player like Valentin Mackel, surely he's tested this matchup, surely he has the experience, he's going to know how to navigate it and how to try to grind out a longer game against a control deck.
I think maybe in round 1 that would be more true. But I think at the end of a weekend of playing against the best players in the world, I think Jose has sort of probably closed that experience gap considerably.
For sure. And will continue to do so when he comes for his first Pro Tour in February. All right, the middle match, that's Sebastian Fiala-Ibitz for Austria. He's playing the Mardu mid-range deck up against Wilfredo Bajorquez. That's Black-Red Dragons. So again, Ian, what's your sense of what may be going on there?
This is going to be a fairly close matchup. I mean, they're two very similar decks, right? Sort of black-red based decks that are more mid-range. So in that sense, it could go either way. I'd say probably the Mardu mid-range deck is a little bit favored, just having the extra color, a little bit access to a little bit more powerful cards. With the Black-Red Dragons deck, the onus is going to be a little bit more on that deck being aggressive, and I think you want to be slower and have a little bit more power in that kind of semi-mirror match.
All right, so then we get into our right-hand matchup, and this is Nicky Eigner for Austria. He's playing Esper Dragons, the classic Esper Dragons list that pretty much everyone in the field not only arrived at, but having arrived at it went, let's leave that bad boy up against Christopher Verla, red-green landfall, and that is somewhat unusual within the field as a whole. Ian, what do you reckon?
I think this is going to be slightly in the favor of red-green landfall. If it were a more all-in red deck, like pure mono red or the non-landfall versions of Atarka red with more tokens, it might be even more in the favor of the red deck here. But the landfall decks tend to be just a tad slower than that, which will give the Esper control deck a little bit more time to solidify the matchup. But I think it's very, very close in general.
Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes to pick a winner. But BDM, I want to talk to you away from the edginess of who's going to play what on turn 2 and sideboarding. Just take a moment to talk about the Guatemala story, and because this is that they are living the dream for all those teams who haven't made it into the top 8 but have come from around the world thinking, if it all falls right, they're us right now.
You know what? And it's also a story of dogged pursuit, right? Because they've been coming to this tournament for 4 years, the Guatemalan team, as a unit, and each year getting Guatemala a little further along in the tournament.
Yeah.
So they've done, no day 2. They've done top 32.
And
they've reached the round of 16,
Yeah.
and now here they are playing in the top 8 in their 4th year in this tournament.
Okay, so the question becomes, can Guatemala do it? Because they are the underdog in terms of experience for sure, but it sounds, Ian, like you think in terms of the cards on the table, pretty even.
Yeah, I'm going to give Guatemala a slight favorite in terms of the way the decks match up. I'm going to give Austria a slight favorite in terms of experience, but I'm going to give Guatemala the huge favorite in terms of spirit. So, all in all, it's too close to tell. If I were a player at home in Guatemala, sitting in my local game store, watching this unfold, I would be on the edge of my seat. This matchup is going to be about as close as it can get.
All right. Brian David Marshall?
I like the Crackling Dooms here in that middle match, and I think that could be the difference in the way this match plays out.
Well, whether you win or lose, in Guatemala we know all the game stores are open and you're all glued to your seats. We wish you at least the best of luck and have a tremendous quarterfinal. Who knows when it comes round again? That's the beauty of the World Magic Cup. Let's see where the cards fall. Austria, Guatemala, it's quarterfinal 3.